and welcome to another exciting new episode of Light in the Darkness, where we are going to be talking about something completely different from last time and yet utterly similar.
That was a better lead-in than last time.
Yes.
Not just a topic.
Yes.
We're going to continue with the topic.
Yes. No, I thought I practiced this. Okay. So today we thought we would talk. We started to talk last time about reasoning errors, and we thought today we would continue with logical fallacies.
Yes. So just a reminder, if you didn't watch the last one, what are logical fallacies? They're errors in reasoning that undercut an argument. In a lot of cases, they might completely make the argument invalid, but in some places it just weakens it. So I have grouped some of these. So today, the theme of the types of fallacies we're going to go over are personal attacks and groupthink. I quite like these because I think they're funny. They're not funny when they happen. It's obviously quite terrible.
But afterwards, they can be
fun.
But
afterwards, it just, to me, this really embodies kind of the lowest form of argumentation of when you go into the personal instead of making an actual argument. So that's what we're going to go over today. Are you ready, Stephen?
I was born ready.
Of course you were. So the first one we're going to talk about is ad hominem. So this is a type of argumentation where instead of actually engaging with the counter argument or what someone has said, you instead attack an opponent's character or their personal traits to undermine their argument. So this is a personal attack towards someone. So with my students, I usually call this the little brother fallacy because my little brother went through a phase where he thought it was hilarious that if I said anything, he would just answer with "your face is stupid" and then laugh and like run off. So you're not engaging with anything. You're just making it personal and you're attacking someone's appearance, their character, or whatever to undermine what they're saying. Off the top of your head, can you think of any examples of ad hominems that you see?
I think it's easy. This is something that a lot of people easily stoop to, especially when they become emotional.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I meant by easy. It's something that we easily revert to. I do think that there are different ways to do it, all equally invalid, but you can have fun with it in sort of offhand things like, I don't really care what anyone else says, Anna, but I don't believe you're an idiot, which is a nice way to call someone an idiot without actually calling them an idiot, which is not the best example of an ad hominem argument, but there are nice and sneaky ways to do that and attack someone's character.
Yeah. So a really a common way that I see, this isn't happening right now because we don't have any female candidates running for president, but in the past presidential election, when Hillary was running, a really common way that I would see ad hominems within media is they would focus a lot on what she was wearing or how she had done her hair in certain debates or speeches that she gave, but then not actually address any of her talking points.
Right.
So technically that's an ad hominem, even though usually it was critical, they were attacking. But this happens a lot with, I would say, female politicians that instead of then unpacking what they have said in certain contexts, debates, talks, whatever, they will focus instead on their physical characteristics, what they're wearing, and attack those things instead of attacking or unpacking the actual arguments that they've made.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. Yeah. So you really detract from what someone is saying by just kind of focusing on something else, right?
Yeah.
And something very personal, which,
Well, and not even detract, you just refuse to engage with the arguments that they're making and instead just attack their personal, what they look like, their personal character instead of that. Yeah. Can I move on? There's a second one that's like closely tied, but do you have
I think
anything
so.
you
Yes.
want
No,
to
I
add?
think this was very
So
clear. So this is something you see for sure, and I think you see this a lot again in a very quick illustration. Like at some point there was an issue. We had a fairly right-wing politician. This is idiomatic expression, hard to translate, but there was a debate, and all of a sudden in Parliament, he just shouts, "Oh, just act normal for once," to the Prime Minister, which is again may not be exactly about the Prime Minister's persona or whatever, but it's a strange response. But when someone is cornered, then complete non-response to the arguments presented, and just presented as if the Prime Minister is doing something that is abnormal. Again, this is not the best example, but it does happen.
Yeah. Well, something that happens. I don't want to bring up Trump specifically, but I'm going to. So I guess I'm going
yeah, but it's just an example.
So
it's not about
what
you think about Trump. It's just about how, in this case, he reasons.
Yes, I'm not wanting to alienate anyone, but this is something that happens quite often, and especially lately with the COVID press conferences. There's been a few times when a journalist has asked a question, and Trump hasn't liked that question, and instead of responding to that question, he will attack them personally. So he's called a few female reporters nasty for their questions. So that would be an ad hominem. So instead of engaging with what has been said or asked, you are then calling this person nasty. And obviously there's been some other things that he said as well that, again, are attacking that person instead of engaging with the argument themselves. Closely tied to an ad hominem, and sometimes they'll happen at the same time, is a tu quoque. I might be saying that right. It's Latin for you also.
Yes, quoque. Yes.
Quoque. So this is avoiding having to engage with criticism by turning it back against the accuser. So you answer criticism with criticism. So if someone asks you a question, or if someone asks you a question, instead of answering that question, what you think of criticism, you just give criticism back. So again, my quick example of this, I'm sorry, again, would be Trump, but a lot when he has these arguments with journalists, if they ask a question that he doesn't like, instead of engaging with that question, he'll criticize the news source. So like by calling CNN fake news. So instead of engaging with the argument, if you feel like you've been criticized, you then criticize that person instead. So it's just like you're tossing back.
It's a deflection then, really, right?
Yeah, absolutely a deflection. So I see this a lot in political debates as well, that if a certain candidate is asked a certain question, instead of answering it, they'll criticize what someone else's response is to that question instead of seeing what their response is. Do you have any other examples of that? Tu quoque?
I do think you see this. You see this in science too. I once saw something at a conference about someone presenting about something about a study with monkeys, if I remember correctly, and someone in the audience asking what I thought was a fair question about the experiment.
Yeah.
And then the presenter said something along the lines of, "Yeah, but you don't study monkeys, so you don't know this." But it was still a fair question. I mean, so I don't think that was fair. I don't know if this is a good example, but you do. Yeah, but what do you know? You don't study monkeys.
Yeah.
So you know.
No, I think that's close. That it's very much, because I think with the tu quoque and the ad hominem, they're both, like you said, come out of that like emotional state that I think you're taking something personally, and rather than engaging with the argument logically, you're then responding emotionally. And one way is to then just criticize the other person instead of thinking about the question that's been asked or the argument that's taking place. Make sense? Before
it does make sense, and I also think that this is something that is kind of human nature that when people criticize you or your work or whatever, I think it is fairly natural to feel that flash of emotion and then maybe say something because you don't really know how to respond at the time, to just sort of attack that person personally. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying that I think that's a human thing.
I think it is a human thing, and I think it comes back to what you had said in a previous episode about the process of like a journal article being rejected. That your first, well, at least for a lot of us, our first instinct is to take it personally, when really it isn't. They're not attacking you as a person. They're trying to better your argument. They're giving you criticism about your argument, not about you as a human being, right? But I think we automatically take it as our defenses need to go up because I'm being attacked.
Yes, which may be a very, like, evolutionarily speaking, relevant thing to sort of raise your hairs and respond with a counterattack.
Yeah.
But in a logical sense, it doesn't. In a logical discussion, that is, of course, no longer an appropriate response.
Yes. Well, you can have a counterattack that is making a logical argument.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But that's something that I think you learn. Like, you have to learn. And for some people, it's easier to become irate than it is. Like, for other people, are a bit calmer to begin with.
Yeah. So the third one I wanted to talk about is personal incredulity. Oh, I can never say this word, incredulity.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. You're the English professor. Don't look at me. I mean, incredulity, that's how I've always said it, but I don't know.
Okay. Some reason that word just like it tongue ties me. Okay. So this is, I quite like this one because I think it's funny, and I see this quite a lot. Saying that because you find something difficult to understand, it is therefore not true.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So I see arguments a lot around this, like with global warming.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll hear comments of, this was a really cold winter, so this can't be global warming. I don't understand. So therefore it can't be true. Or even like evolution. I don't understand how we could have evolved from water creatures, therefore it must not be true. The danger of this, because I don't understand a lot of stuff, so a lot of stuff would not be true. Do you have any examples of that?
I think these are good examples, but yeah, there is a lot, right? Like, oh well, we don't know what there was before the Big Bang, so it can't be true.
Or there is nothing.
I mean, like, but that's not the most logical. Or another, I think, great one is there's a strange light in the sky. I don't know what it is, so it must be an alien civilization visiting us and probably going to abduct a few people. I mean, no, that is indeed a possibility.
Yeah.
Is it the most plausible possibility? Probably not. But if you don't know what something is, then you will have to investigate that, and you cannot just jump to just the mere misunderstanding should not make you jump to an explanation that is probably the least likely and far-fetched, but just because you think that must then probably be the case.
Yeah. So this is just the simple of, just because you don't understand something doesn't mean that it isn't true. That shouldn't be that should not be the measure of how valid an argument or anything is. Because like I said, you
can't be an expert at everything, right?
No.
I mean, I am, but that's just I'm just kidding.
You really are.
But that matters, because you can't expect a random person on the street to understand an incredibly complicated mathematical argument. I wouldn't understand. I mean, so everybody has their specializations, and this can be very difficult. But I think it's a very good way to look at things. The fact that you don't understand it doesn't mean that it's not true. I think that's a great summary of that.
Yeah. I think that's something I don't know. I had that realization about some of my profs. I just assumed, like, my English profs, if they were English profs, they knew everything about English. And I remember the first time going to one prof, talking to them about wanting them to be my supervisor. And I was going to be looking at like Victorian children's lit, and they're like, I don't know anything about Victorian children's lit. And I was like, but you have a doctorate. in
Surely you know everything.
literature. You mean there's even a narrower understanding? Yeah. So just because you do not understand something does not mean it is not true. That was the case, like airplanes wouldn't be a real thing, because no matter how many times people try to explain to me how airplanes work, I don't get it.
Yeah, but how many things do we not understand? How many people understand on the molecular level how a microwave works? But I mean, that doesn't mean it does not exist, or your TV, or your car, or your whatever, your hairdryer.
Yes.
Like, I mean, it doesn't. Yeah, no, that's a
Yeah,
fair.
yeah. Something I say to my students that I they don't always take well, because I think they think I'm being mean, but it's a real thing of like, so many people do not know how little we know. And that has been my the more education I have, the more research I do. It hasn't been me feeling more confident about me knowing everything. It's been, holy cow, there are so many avenues of knowledge. There is just, I don't know so much. And that doesn't
Yeah, and
mean
so
it's
many
not true.
different people in so many different disciplines also acknowledge that. But if you're outside that discipline, then you may be mistaken how certain a lot of these things are. As a psychologist, we
Yes.
always look at physics because we think that physics is a super hard science where everything is known. But then you talk to a physicist and then, well, I don't know, string theory, yeah, could be true, could be not. There's also counter evidence. We don't know.
Yeah.
So it is difficult. And then there is also the fact that a lot of I'm being very careful not to go off on a tangent here, but that so many things in science end up not being published simply because statistically they're not significant results, which is a whole different story, but that is an issue too. So when students, for example, read a psychology textbook, they think that all research is like that, but all the failed experiments you hardly ever read about, right? And that biases how little we actually know. The people think we know more than we actually do.
Yeah. It's very destabilizing to realize how little we know.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, that's another existential crisis we have now evoked. So now people are all panicking. Yeah, no, people, we don't know anything. Go ahead.
Just like join me. That is my Stephen. I was going to say made me. You did not make me. Stephen and I traded book, not reviews, recommendations, and Stephen recommended a frame. It was my idea because I have a lot of time. Not a lot of time. We're isolated. I want to read. So I read a brain book, and it just, it freaked me out because it realized how little I know about the brain, even reading that brain book. So.
And you have one, like you actually have one in your head. So I mean, imagine that you have it and you don't even know what it's doing. Like we do, like not just you, but I mean, we don't know a lot of stuff we don't know, right?
Yeah. It doesn't mean it's not true. Okay.
Yeah.
Ready to move on?
I'm
the last
ready.
one. So the last one, so this is good under like the groupthink, is the bandwagon fallacy. So this is an appeal to popularity, or the argument that because the majority is doing something, that is a form of validation. So that because everyone is doing it, that then makes it correct. So if everyone believes in X, it must be true. So this is holding that the opinion of the majority is valid simply because it's a majority opinion or an opinion or a majority belief. Any examples off the tip of your brain?
Well, I mean, at some point, slavery was kind of a popular notion. That doesn't mean that because everybody believed in that, or a lot of people believe in that, that's a good thing, and that there are many of these kinds of things, like, oh, animals. I happen to know that you have vegan tendencies, but I mean, animals have no feelings, so they can be vivisected and cut up while they're alive. I don't think that is a healthy thought either, but at some point, that was widely believed, and thus people just did that, right? So, that's a very good fallacy to be aware of, I would say.
Well, and especially right now, because I don't know for people watching this where you're at in your world with the COVID being opening up, the restrictions being opening up. But for us in Alberta, the restrictions are very slowly being opened, and across Canada, they're being opened. And it can be very confusing, at least for me, to then measure what I should be doing, because the health minister is saying one thing, and yet this past weekend, parks in Toronto were teeming with people. So you have like this expert talking, but then you're like the bandwagon approach of, well, everyone else is outside. Why can't I then also go outside? Because it seems like they're doing it and whatever. So what is everyone else doing? That it becomes this of, I don't quite understand what I don't understand what the minister is saying, but I don't understand what the restrictions are that the minister is recommending to us. Because I'm not quite sure. But then you look and then you measure it on, well, what is everyone else doing? And actually, that's not a good way to measure it, right? On just because the majority is doing it doesn't mean that that's the right thing to be doing.
Yeah, and then I think kind of related to that, although maybe from the flipped perspective, is something that I think a lot of people do when they make decisions. And this is kind of where social psychology meets more cognitive psychology and decision making, etc. Mm-hmm. But there is the idea of the tragedy of the commons, of, well, everybody is you have this pasture and every farmer is allowed to have X cows on it, and every farmer, if a couple farmers think, well, you know what, everybody is having X cows and that's fine, the pastures can handle this, but I can put on X plus 2 or plus 3 or plus 10 cows, which may be okay if one farmer does that, but if everybody thinks that way, then at some point the pasture is destroyed and all the cows will die. And now everybody is screwed, right? Yeah. And this kind of decision making of it's everyone else should be doing X, Y, and Z. But for me, it's okay. I'm just one person. I can do this or that. Then you run into...
Well, and it's that groupthink of the danger of being a bystander. So also it's just easier to go with the group opinion. It's easier to go with the bandwagon opinion. Because if everyone else is doing it, it's just easier to go along with it. That, oh gosh, Elie Wiesel, do you know Elie Wiesel? Mm-hmm. He wrote a really excellent memoir about his childhood in a concentration camp, but he gave a speech about the danger of being a bystander. For anyone watching this, please go look it up because it's beautiful. But it's talking about this, the bandwagon approach, right? That then this becomes dangerous if you then quiet what you feel is right or what you're seeing as being logical because, well, the opinion of the majority is valid. So I'm just going to stand by and let X, Y, and Z happen.
With disastrous results. And unfortunately, it's been shown many times in psychology labs all over the world that it doesn't take much for people to do this. Famous experiment in social psychology from Asch, A-S-C-H. You can find videos of this on YouTube, which are incredibly entertaining if it would not be so tragic, but they're still very entertaining. The famous line experiment. So basically, a person brought into the lab and is asked to indicate which of, let's say, 5 lines is the shortest line or the longest line, whatever. And he is put in a room with, let's say, 4 other people, but it turns out those 4 people are Confederates. So they're part of the experiment, but the participant doesn't know that. Okay. And there are videos of this on YouTube, which are fantastic. So let's say you have to indicate, I think they actually had to indicate which line matches another line. So you have line A, which is this length, and you have B, C, D, E. Which of these 4 lines is the same length as line A? Okay. Mm-hmm. Now what happened was, so let's say that this is your reference line. Okay. Now you have 4 lines besides that. The actual participant has to give his opinion last. So the other 4 people all mention the line that they think mentions this line in length, but they're instructed to pick a completely wrong line. So this is your reference line and they all pick this line, which is obviously not even close in length to the reference line. So they will say E. And the next person says E, which is this, right? So you have videos of this. Asch took video recordings, and the first trial, you see these participants look at the others like they're insane. This is no, it's B. Yeah. But then for this, basically the second trial onwards, everybody does the same thing, and you see the participants already give up. So it takes 2 trials and they say, oh, C. And you see that they don't believe it, but they go along with the group. And it doesn't take much. Very, very little. And they just start to go with the group.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I do, it's not an experiment, but a thought experiment I do with my students that we read George Orwell's Shooting an Elephant. Everyone should go read it. You can read it online. It's very short. But basically the narrator within this short story has to make the decision about, he's a police officer in Burma, make the decision about whether or not he's going to shoot this elephant who was causing damage but is now calmed down. But there's a crowd behind him that wants him to shoot the elephant. And he ends up shooting the elephant. So then I have my students talk through, what would you do? And a lot of them, right, are that hard. Well, no, it's wrong. The elephant's tame. He talks about how he doesn't have the right gun to shoot the elephant. So it's a really terrible death that this elephant then has. But then my students that are really good critical thinkers pick that up of, I want to say that I wouldn't shoot the elephant, but with the crowd behind me, with the majority behind me, putting that pressure on me, I don't know if I would make a different decision. So anyway, it's an interesting thought experiment.
It is. And I think it's also important to realize that it's very easy to watch something like this, listen to a discussion like this and say, well, I would not do that. I would stand up and I would say no. But unfortunately, history has shown us, both in actual history as well as in experimental designs in a lab, that people simply don't.
Yeah.
They don't. There are those who do.
Yes.
But they're vastly outnumbered by people who go with the group and just do whatever the group does or what the experimenter tells them to do, which is disturbing. And you can only make a difference if you are aware of that, right?
Yeah. And even if you're aware of that in the moment, because a lot of times when you're in the moment, you're making such an emotional decision that, are you even thinking it through? Because I talk about this with my students, that I admit that probably if I was in that moment, Stephen's already hinted that I'm an animal lover and I'm a vegan, I would probably shoot the elephant. I don't know within that. I would hope that I would stand by my convictions and I would choose not to, but who knows? But now that I've thought about it, I wouldn't shoot it, but in that moment.
Yeah, and then all kinds of things come into play, emotions and the group and pressure and all kinds of things, expectations. We know this. I mean, as psychologists, we know this. People are not rational. They are all kinds of things, but they are not rational when it comes to making decisions or actually providing argumentation. So it's sad, but it's true. But if you become aware of it, then you can learn to become better at that, right? And improve yourself in that.
Because there is something comforting about making a decision or following a certain argument and having other people backing it up, that kind of bandwagon, that there is comfort in that. So the flip side of that is often it's uncomfortable to argue against a bandwagon, because most likely you're going to then have a lot more criticism coming at you because you're going against the majority.
Yeah, and also think about this from an evolutionary perspective. It makes complete sense that if you would be cast out of a group, you'd die. So, I mean, I think we have, to a degree, we have evolved to do these kinds of things and have this mechanism in our brain that says, oh, it's a group. You better go along with these people, because otherwise, who knows what will happen to you?
Yeah.
Which is not valid, but it is,
Just need to be prepared to be the lone wolf sometimes. That's what they do. They get kicked out for a bit. They go on their own. They survive on their own. And then they rejoin when they are ready to rejoin. Exactly. So be the lone wolf.
Yes. This was our educational message. Be the lone wolf.
Be the lone wolf.
Now you know.
I know. And that's it. So I want to go over ad hominem, attacking personal characteristics about someone, the two quoque, which is answering criticism with more criticism, the personal incredulity, which is saying because you don't understand something, it's not true. And then lastly, the bandwagon, which is the majority is in the right because they are simply the majority. And that's it. That's it for today.
Beautiful. And yet again, 29 minutes and 30 seconds. It's beautiful, isn't it? Like, we're just consistent.
Oh, God. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, I think it's good. I don't think it's bad. I think it's good. I think we're pretty consistent. People have said that they don't mind half an hour. So half an hour is good.
For me, I see the one person that says keep it to 20. And I go, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep it to 20. Sorry, one comment. Next time, maybe.
Maybe. We can't make it.
Probably not.
Right. We do our best.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for watching. We shall be again. No, not again. We shall be back again at some point.
Yes.
What are we going to talk about then?
Our last fallacies. I have one last group of fallacies, and then we'll move on from fallacies.
Excellent. So now you know what to look forward to. More fallacies.
Yay!
All right. Thank you all. Bye.